If you've looked at my YouTube page, you'll see that my motto is, if you can't judge a book by the cover, it has the wrong cover. And usually, that's a pretty easy motto to stand by. For example, the 100-Year-Old Travel Guide looks like a travel guide. It's got a fastener on it. You can throw it in a backpack. But what do you do when your book is about someone who's invisible? How do you make a visible physical object evoke the invisible? I could do something like plexiglass cover or something like that, but that's not luxurious to me. That's not a luxury library item to me. I want something tactile that I can enjoy, but also that somehow brings about this idea of the invisible man. So I have an idea. Let's take a look at it. So what I'm thinking for the book, just draw a quick sketch. This is a good idea to do before you start a project anyway. Doesn't have to be anything too amazing, just basic idea. So what I'm thinking for the book is to do the bulk of the book in a gray leather. Now, this is what I have, and this is what I'm thinking of using. The problem with this, it looks okay. I mean, I have this one of the very first books that I did in this, and it looks okay. The corners are a mess, but I was terrible at corners back then. This is upholstery leather. This is an offcut from a guy making couches and chairs and things like that. And it is made to resist stains. It's made to resist impressions, scratches. It's not particularly flexible. It is basically made to not be changed. What we want to do is change it. So it'll be tough to work with, but I think we'll be able to do it. What I'm thinking is, I'll fold this over as if it's roughly the book shape. I'm thinking of, in the top left corner, doing just a little blind tooling. And what that means is there's no gold or silver or anything like that. It's just an impression, kind of like this, but it would be smaller than that likely, and just impressed into that, maybe with 14-point letters, something small, very subtle, not even that big really. And then I may or may not do a very subtle human figure down on the side here, walking along. Now keep in mind that when the invisible man is invisible, he's naked because his clothing can show. So what I was thinking is maybe doing a Greek-inspired kind of figure, like a tasteful nude, but it would be so slightly embossed that it's just a hint of the figure there, not even a gray board thickness, a couple of sheets, maybe a couple of watercolor-sized sheets figure there. And then in the book, he's scientifically figured out how to make himself invisible, and then subsequently figured out he can't undo it yet. This book was written just on the cusp of the invention of the scientific method and this idea that almost anything can be solved through science. All these mysteries, turning metal to gold, all the alchemical things, all the magical things could be explained through science, could be achieved through science. Immortality, resurrection, that's where we get Frankenstein and things like that. Same kind of a period. And I haven't read it through really carefully this bit, but he's basically looking at refraction in the way that light moves, and he makes it so that the light can go through him or around him, something like that. So what I'm thinking is similar to on the bookbinding, care of books thing, where I have these indentations. I'm thinking of doing a similar kind of indentation in little geometric water drop figures, but all over it like this in a grid pattern, not random. This will look a bit more random, but basically all up here as well. So the book has all of these little indented spaces, and then cut them out and put in this blue. So you'll have kind of debossed blue teardrop shapes all the way through there. I think that will bring a lot of drama and a lot of color to something that's trying to explain the invisible. And then on the spine, I'll do a little debossed area here where I can put in a blue label, maybe with silver, the Invisible Man, and Wells here in the year, something like that. I think I will put bands on it. I don't know if I'll do all 5 or if I'll do something a bit fancier there. We'll see. But I think for the front, this idea, the little subtle embossing, subtle figure, and then the debossed drops around there. That's the idea. That way, the very difficult to work with leather, I'm just doing minimal things with it that I know should be able to work all right. And then this is the goat leather. So if I wanted to do silver title or anything in there, I can do that. So gray, blue, this is goat. I don't know what this is. I'll put couch. It's probably cow leather or whatever. And then this one is very subtle. I almost want it so you don't know it's there until you look for a minute. You just wonder what that big blank space is. Because there's also a fear the character has in the book that if he goes out in the rain invisible or in the snow invisible, he'll be seen. The droplets, the condensation will outline his figure and he'll be seen, and then that could cause him problems. So I think this is the general look that we're going for. And I will now go and get the files and print them out. Head to the Patreon page. The link is in the description. And then press the link to shop up above. You'll see this week's free book at the top for paid members, and here you'll see The Invisible Man. Just click on Buy Now, and then at the bottom, you will download the signatures. Double-click the zip file if you're on a Mac. You can right-click it and open it up if you're on a PC, and then you don't need the zip anymore. Double-click this one and lay it out nice and easy. You have instructions and then 8 different sets of sheets to print out and fold together. Each one will be a nice PDF file. The pages won't be in order. Don't be alarmed by that. That's on purpose so that when they're folded together, they come out in the right order. I recommend you set this to about 90 degrees, print on both sides of the paper, and it's important that you flip on the short side. That's what will line it up. You can print in grayscale, but I've put some neat little color bits in my copy. If you're using that one, then you'll probably want to print in color. And out it comes. If this is your first time, you might want to print out one section, fold it, print out another, and fold it. I can usually get a set folded while the other one prints. And it's important to note here, I didn't go 90% with the ones that I'm using in my example. I went 100% size on them. And to be honest, it's a little bit big. If I do decide I want to trim this, it's going to be tricky. I'll be trying to trim about 1 millimeter off, which I can do, but it's nicer to have a bit of extra gap there. In fact, in Bookbinding and the Care of Books, it states that you want, when you're having a book bound, to have quite a liberal gutter on it for that reason. And they're not wrong. So as we fold it up, we open the one we've just folded and slide the others inside, like an alligator eating them. And the last one will be the one with the little mark on the spine. Again, if you're using my file, you don't have to pay for anything like this. You can find it online, do all the editing yourself. It is quite a bit of work, but it's very doable. But if you want the illustrations and the formatting and everything done for you, it is good value, but you don't have to do it. And there we go. That's one signature. And here they all are together. Now you'll notice the gray marks. They go right down in a little diagonal line there, so you know that that's the top of the book and that they're in the correct order. And there we go. Now here on the back, that's what the little mark looks like before it's folded. Make sure that's on the outside. The inner pages will be sequential numbering, so you can tell where the inside of the fold is by the numbers going one then the next without skipping any. And the outside you can tell because of these marks. Now we will cut the tabs, cut the ribbons, and punch the book. This book uses 3 ribbons plus the 2 kettle stitches. There is some mention in the older literature about bookbinding that this is a bit lazy and that you should be doing 5, but also they tend to be doing books that are a bit bigger. The paper tends to be a bit heavier, and I think that might factor in as well. I find 3 plus the 2 kettle stitches to be a really solid way to put this together. By the way, I'm not mentioning paper grain again in this one, and I know from the comments a lot of people are quite upset that I haven't stressed that very much. I'm going to do a whole video on it just so you learn about what it is, why it's important once you get to a certain stage, and why I think it's not terribly important when you're just learning how to do this. I've got a video in the works on that, so don't worry, that's coming. It does tend to get more expensive when you're finding paper going the right way, but one of the viewers did suggest that if you have a cutting facility or a lot of patience and skill doing it, you could fold these ones again, making a smaller book, a book half this size, and then the grain will be going in the right direction, even if it's standard printer paper. So here we have 8 signatures, so we need 8 lengths of thread. And I always do 1 for good measure at the end. And truthfully, I'm pretty liberal when I measure these out. So I probably have 2 or even 3 left over at the end. It's a waste of a little bit of thread, but it's also a safeguard if there's something going on, I miscount, or there's a problem and it runs a little bit short. It's nice to have extra at the end. Not have to do a weaver's knot and put it together. It's not the end of the world to do that, but... Okay, I'm going to pick the smallest needle that I think my thread will go through without too much trouble. And that one popped right through nicely. Pull about 5 centimeters or 3 inches through, and then flatten it out, stab the needle through, and pull it back over itself. And you'll have a nice, thin, low profile knot that is not going anywhere. So right like that, and then over itself. And you just tighten it up like that. Play around with this a little bit, and it won't take long, you'll get it. Second, third try, if that. So now, starting from the outside, pushing in through the kettle stitch hole, and then out. Now, as I pull this through, I'm going to leave about 5 centimeters or 3 inches hanging out the end so that I can tie it up when I get back to this end of the book. You can put a little clip on there if you want, but with a little bit of care, it's usually fine. So in, out. Now you notice I don't have the tapes on there yet. Don't worry, I'll get them, but to do it now, I find they tend to just fall out and you wind up doing them 2-3 times. There we go. And by the way, someone queried about that wound on my left hand. It's a burn from the oven, and it's almost healed up there now. But it wasn't too bad. go, out through the final kettle. And now this is the point where putting the 3 tapes in, 3 bands if you prefer it. I use the terminology where there are tapes and the bits that hang over are the tabs. I'm going to do a second one, I think. I can go about that far, and then they really do need to go through, because to try and loop around and come back is tricky. So here, just feed it through. These are actual made for this purpose tapes, but I've used strips of cloth. You can use strips of leather. But this stuff is really what's properly made for it these days. It's not expensive. But these things add up too. If you're trying to get lots of practice in on a budget, then really any kind of material you can feed through here and it'll work. Don't let any lack of material or tools prevent you from bookbinding at all. I've taken apart, I'm getting close to 100 books now that are measured in the centuries for age, and there are all kinds of signs of little improvisations and different kinds of materials used. We have this idea that they were very formal and set in their ways. I know from experience that that is not the case. There was a lot of innovation and adaptation, improvisation. I'm sure some binding houses had things done in a very special, set way, but certainly not all of them. And maybe not all the time. So we're approaching quite an important part of sewing this these first 2 quires or signatures together. The technical proper term is quire, but signature is kind of a nickname, a shorthand term that's become very popular for it, especially in North America. People will know what you mean. People in the know will know. So before I tie that together on this end, I want to make sure everything is nice and snug. So I'm just going to pull both threads up, just pinch and roll my hand. Not so much that I tear the paper, but as snug as I can do it without that. And then I pull these 2 together, make sure those papers are lined up. You can use a little clip to hold them together, that helps. I'm just going to try and do it freehand, although the thread is not cooperating, turning into a knot here for me, but I'll get it. My big finger's getting in the way. There we go. Now it's just what I call a crisscross and tip it under. The same knot you use when you're tying your shoes. And we should be good to go. There we go. Because this thread is slippery, I will do 3 of them. It's slippery because it's waxed. Sometimes the knot will slip out before getting glued and all sealed together. So there we go, nice and tight. Now with our first 2 signatures fastened together nicely and our thread all fastened, our tapes in there, the text block, which it now is technically, I think, could be called a text block, it's much easier to handle. It's getting a little bit of weight to it, doesn't slide around quite so much. So we'll get those 3 tabs sticking up that way, make sure they're not pinched between them, between the quires or signatures. Now you notice here, I'm having trouble getting this needle through. It is just not finding the punched hole. Something may have shifted out of place. Maybe a flap of paper has refolded over it. So I just give a little push from the inside to line it up. It's much easier to do from the inside. And then I find where it is, and there it goes. Now with that one properly lined up, the rest of them shouldn't be giving me any trouble. So out we come. Snug them up together. And don't forget to loop through the last thread, just the last one, not all the way across the two signatures, but just the last signature. Get nice and careful in there. Make sure you're not stabbing through the thread or through the tape, because you want that tape to be mobile, and you want the thread to be mobile too, so you can tighten it. And then back in. The thread can be a little ungainly at first because it's so long, but every signature you put on there, it is shorter by a signature. So it gets easier and easier as you go. Look how quick I am. And there we go. Now we have a proper sewn text block. Little knot at the end. And again, this just has to hold together until it's glued, and the glue hardens. That gives it a lot of strength. Locks those threads in place. So the tools go away. And here we are. Are these tapes mobile? Yes, they are. They can slide and get evened out. Now I'm going to put these two pieces of, it's just book cloth with leather on it that I used for the demonstration on turn-ins. I just left them glued on there and cut it out as press boards again. Just protects the text block, especially when it has leather on it already for the cover. Putting it into a vise like this and tightening it up will put a line indentation along the leather, but a couple of little boards like this on the side will prevent that. It'll just round out the edge of that board enough. So here I'm getting the text block as even as I can, as flat as I can on the ends, because remember, I won't have a lot of room to cut. If I'm going to trim that, I'm going to have to be very conservative with the amount I take off. And if you do it well enough, you might not even want to trim it, depending on what you're looking at. Remember, because of the way we folded it, we have that nice zigzag pattern on the foredge. That's the farthest edge from the spine. So here is where we lock these signatures in together. They're pressed nice and tight together, so we're not going to get a lot of glue running down in between the pages, gluing up things that you don't want glued up. We'll do a liberal amount of glue. We don't want it dripping all down the sides. And here also, we can glue the tapes in. We've got them evenly spaced out on both sides, so they don't need to move anymore. We can lock those in place. And now we just wait. Now, I've done a little bit of a test here to see how thick the bit under the leather needs to be in order to get that human shape how I want it, where there's just a hint of it from the right angle. One layer of thickness, I think, disappears a bit too much. That top one there is a bit too obvious. I'm leaning toward this middle one. I think that's a nice little hint of it there. So sketch out just a rough form of a human being. You can print something out from the internet and cut it out. Glue it to a piece of paper and cut it out if you want something thinner. I'm fairly used to drawing and artwork, so I'll just sketch out my own. The human brain is really good too for making corrections for us when we draw. Even sometimes if we make a mistake, the brain will say, oh, that must be turned this way, or it must be foreshortened because it's reaching a certain direction. There are all these different illusions that can happen. And so if we make a little mistake in our drawing, quite often someone looking at it won't even register it as a mistake. But here things are pretty much how I want them. Remember, he won't be wearing any clothes, so there's no jackets or hat rims or anything like that. It's his body that's invisible. And I'm going to cut it out with scissors, but just taking the bulk of the paper off of it first is a good way to make it easier and not have big flaps of paper getting in the way. This paper is a little thicker than the one that I did my tests with. That was 120 GSM, and this is watercolor paper, which is probably 150, possibly 180 or a bit more. I don't think it's 200. But anyway, it might be enough on its own, but just in case it isn't, I'll trace out another one. In fact, I might want to put another one on the back. I don't know. A quick trace, and then the same process again. Cut out the rough shape around it, and then get in there with the scissors for the finer lines. Bit of ambiguity as to what's going on as far as his posture and his movements is also fine, because remember, he's invisible. He's supposed to be difficult or impossible to see. So your brain struggling a little bit to make out what's happening there, that's fine. Hi. So I am currently in Africa. This was a planned trip, but it was planned for 3 weeks after today. So the bad news is this may throw a bit of a hiccup into the Invisible Man build. Maybe not. I did bring, I think, everything I need to do the project except for the blind tooling of the title. Everything else I should be able to put the leather on there, cut it in, do all that. So I'm going to try and do that. But there might be a little hiccup at the end there. But if that happens and there's no blind tooling on it at the end, the little words that say the title, etc., then what I will do is I'll do a short of it, like I have for some of the other books later on. I'll finish it up to that point in the second video, and I'll do a short of it. The good news, though, is I am in Africa because I am on my way back up to Oxford for 6 weeks. So I'm going to be meeting with a few people at the university there. I may get some good content out of that, but also I will be able to go into Blackwell's and Waterstones and some bookstores there that I enjoy, maybe a couple of little independent ones, and see what's kicking around, and just give you a bit of an insight into that area. I will check while I'm there as well about filming in the Bodleian. That's the main University of Oxford library. I probably won't be able to, but I might be able to. We'll see. I'll go in and I'll ask while I'm there. But in the meantime, I will end this video here and get on doing the second half of it in Oxford in a couple of days. I hope you're enjoying the build so far and following along. If you want any more kind of refined tips at a beginner level, the Bookbinding for Beginners, the journal, custom journal for beginners videos will be great for that. And I'll try and give as much detail as I go along through this too, so that more advanced people can build it and the beginners won't get lost with it. As always, if you have any questions, I'm happy to help with whatever skills and knowledge that I have up to this point. But keep learning, I'm keeping learning, and together we'll be better bookbinders next year than we were this year. I would like to thank the subscribers, the Patreon supporters, and those of you who watch the videos and like the videos and interact with the videos. It's great to see, and it really is fulfilling to see this stuff get out there and people enjoy it. I hope you all have a great week. Be kind to each other. I hope others are kind to you, and we will see you in the next video.